Welcome to another episode of the Life of Elvis podcast. I'm your host Elvis, and today with me is once again Marni Ratner. If you've been following my podcast, you probably remember from episode 3, which ended up being like a 2-part episode.
Yep. that was purely
All good.
Comedic effect of what happened last time. That was intentional.
Yeah, technical difficulties the last time. So yeah. She were on my podcast last November, I think it wasn't it? So it's like close to a year.
OMG. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. I will link both episodes in the description below if you haven't seen them. So yeah, let's get into it. So how are you doing?
I'm doing.
We're happy to have you on.
Me too.
Again.
It's first of all, it's so great. I'm so happy. Thank you. I think it's everybody's kind of biggest dream who talks or teaches or lectures or sells is when you have a repeat, somebody wants to do it again. So thanks for that. Really felt good. But I'm okay.
Anytime.
I'm okay. It's been weird. Life has been weird. Work has been weird. People have been weird. And so I've been adjusting to weirdness and trying not to take things too close to the heart. How about you?
Yes. Yeah, I'm good. Constantly working on something, adjusting my path a little bit along the way. Yeah, like I said, new guitar yesterday, so I'm super fucking happy.
Yeah, love that. But that's...
Yeah, so what have you been up to for the last 10 months or so?
I was really building my private practice as an educator and as a guide, working on that was very attractive, expressing ourselves. So, my private practice is really rooted in mind-body connection, how it really affects us in real life and how we communicate, how we sell ourselves, how we connect on every single level. So what I was working on and that's still going great. But I also am a voice teacher. That's kind of what brought me to the industry. And that is taken over. I am working with so many interesting young people, mostly, who bring something interesting to the table. Either how they express themselves in life, how they see themselves in the world. Just really interesting, up-and-coming, amazing humans. So that's been taking up most of my professional time, is teaching voice and how to communicate music, art.
For those who haven't seen the previous episodes, tell us a little bit, quickly, like how do you help people express themselves through music and voice and breathing?
Thank you for that question on how I help people. So all of my students have one thing in common. They feel like they can communicate better. So in the expressive arts world, in the music world, in trying to convey songs or whatever we're trying to work on, which includes adults in business, is they feel they are not effective in relating what's happening on the inside. So whether we're trying to communicate music or, sing a song, is I want to know what you're feeling. We want to identify that and recognize what that does to your body. So, for example, because I think this is really important information, we're just jumping right in right away, aren't we? Someone who has a lot of anxiety about sharing themselves, don't maybe love how they sound, or are super sensitive to how people respond to what it is they're trying to communicate, tend to tighten up. So they're not giving the most honest, clear representation of what's happening on the inside for them. And to me, that's what art is. That's what communication is. It's called the communication arts, I think, for a reason, is we want to share ourselves in the most aligned, secure, clear way possible that the person or that's receiving our song or receiving our lecture, that they can resonate with what you're saying, that they can apply themselves and understand, that there's something useful to take away. So I help them figure out what they want to say, how they want to say it, and why they want to say it. And that includes their music.
Yeah, sounds great. And also a bit relatable in my case, like when you were talking about tensing up and, being a bit difficult with expressing yourself. Yeah, it's one of the reasons why I started this podcast even.
Yeah. To kind of work through it.
To overcome all. Yeah, exactly.
Well, I think most people actually, I'm glad you said that, because I really do think most people, and I'm not overstretching this. What they don't recognize is that our voice, whether we're speaking or singing, is I don't want to say we're a machine, but there's substance to our body, that we're a structure, that our alignment and how we hold ourselves, what the tone of the muscle is, has an incredible effect on what it is that we produce, the sound we create. So if you are tense, nervous, that's going to squeeze on the body, and it doesn't flow the same way. It doesn't create the same sound. A very loose guitar string is going to be out of tune. An overly tight guitar string is going to be out of tune also. One's going to go flat, one's going to go...
Yeah, my bike as well.
Yeah, right. I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the secret to my teaching is making it so personalized, like what's happening in you, what's happening for you and your body, being a really good with the language, becoming fluent in your own body. What does my arms do? What does my back do? Putting all of those pieces together, then we make better sound.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, after all, it's all related, isn't it?
Yeah, it's all related.
And words can be pretty powerful. Like imagine like when you're in a situation when you have to really say to someone, no. That's pretty powerful.
Were you sitting on my coaching this morning? That's what it was all about. Yeah. If you can, I love when somebody finally gets, not just intellectually and conceptually, but can embody that if I remain soft and open, I can handle really big things. And one of the hardest things is to say no to somebody because it's so uncomfortable. And I don't like saying no, but I'm really good at it because it doesn't work.
Yeah, it can be. It's up. Yeah. And a lot of people have troubles with it.
They do.
Many times, due to some childhood trauma or something, when they weren't able to say, they will always have to like follow orders over their parents or someone else. Yeah. So later in life, it's like super hard for them to just say no.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, how many times do you find that you have to say no to somebody where you don't feel like you disappoint them or disappoint yourself? For a multitude of reasons. Everything about saying no. Like, I think we throw this out in culture all the time. Like, it's victorious to say no. Know when you have to say no. All these stupid things we say, have your boundaries. That's not stupid. We need boundaries. But we really have to process a lot and go through a lot of choice making to find the strength to say no, or to go, maybe I should be a little quicker to think, is there a possibility there? Like almost playing the opposite. I want to say no, but should I find a reason to say yes? That's also, I think, extremely powerful in finding our voice and finding how we communicate. What triggers you? What triggers me? What triggers my students and my clients is your mental process really working in your best. Is it your best ally? Or is it your worst enemy? So sometimes saying no only makes us harder to be with. When we can say no we can find out, maybe it wasn't, maybe I shouldn't say no to that. I want to say no, maybe I should say yes. It's really cool. Anywho, I could go off on a tangent forever, right?
No, go for it. We got time. Speaking of the power of the voice, recently I stumbled upon a pretty interesting character, to be honest.
Yeah?
This guy, called RJ Spina. He got, I think it was like a bacterial infection, sepsis, which caused 6 or 5 other health issues, and it basically crushed his spine. So he ended up paralyzed and from chest down. And the doctors were saying there's no way you're gonna walk again. It's super rare that people get this. It's like 60 cases in a year in the States or something like that. And people either stay paralyzed or die very soon after that. And this guy was like, nah, I'm going to walk.
Yeah.
And 3 months later he did, and now he's just fine. So I listened to some podcasts of him, read his book, listened to it actually. It's very interesting, and there's a different, he's got a method to it, which he used, and there's also documentation of it, like videos and all the documents from doctors. So it's not like he's making stuff up, which is pretty interesting. And one of the things, amongst others, was actually using the power of the voice. And he uses certain affirmation, and he also speaks about the power of the voice and how it can also help reprogram your subconscious. And in his case, or in the case of people who use this method, start the healing process.
Yeah. Wow. Now, I've not read the book. I am not terribly familiar. The name rings a bell, but I don't have a big, I don't know if I can get right in the nail of what his perception is, but everything that you said is what I can totally get behind. First of all, the voice is vibrational, and depending on what lineage or what tool or what ideology we're thinking on, it has always been in all of these early foundations. It is in Kundalini Tantra. It is in, the Tibetan monks, the chanting, it is vibrational. So we as modern man think of it as singing and entertainment, but something happens to the body when you create sound at a certain frequency. And if you just think about it on layman's terms, in the most simplest terms, when you hum, you either wail or you vibrate and you tone. So you create your own version of harmony. All of these things transpire in our body. They have a very yin-yang effect, just on every level of any way you want to explain it, it works. So when your body vibrates, and when you're self-vibrating your body through something with tone, you add mantra or words on top of that, you strike the top of your mouth, but basically your hard palate, soft palate of your mouth, goes straight up into the brain. The whole nervous system responds to it. And what I love to say, because I'm also a breathwork practitioner, and this isn't my work, I'm repeating my teacher's work. When you, in breath and sound, you let all of the molecules in your body, all of the channels in your body, all of the space, the 99.9999999% of your body, which is space, move. You vibrate, it moves. The dust moves. The thoughts move. The juices in the body move. It realigns itself. It gets rid of what it doesn't need, and it just lets the new stuff show up. It's like dusting your arm. I'm taking the top layer of my epidermis and I'm making it vibrate. I feel the tingle, and old DNA, old little flecks are leaving and new skin will emerge. I mean, that's how we heal. So yes, music and sound and breath, tuned to love is what I like to say, tuned to the positivity, tuned to the potential, tuned to being good, supports your body on every level. Yes, I'm glad you talked to him. I need to follow up.
Yeah.
Always something.
Always.
Any questions about that? Anything that you would like a little that I could clarify for you?
Well, there's a lot to talk about, actually. Some people, I can see how they're going to be resistant to all of it, because when people start talking about vibration and frequency, it's like, it has a bit of a woo-woo undertone, but when you think about it, what's matter? It's just a bit more dense version of energy. They're both basically the same. They can be changed from one to the other. And what's a significant attribute of energy? It's frequency, vibration. Even atoms, when the higher the temperature, the more they vibrate, they
Your
move
body
around.
is just all of that. That's all it is. I mean,
Exactly.
one of my favorite parts of my adult part of my business is talking to people who are see themselves very highly and are very successful, but they really haven't figured it all out. And I always come back to the same thing, speaking straight to your point, as I push a pencil into your face. Thank goodness there's countries and oceans between us. You cannot feel that. Or can you? It's anatomy, it's physiology, it's science. You change the heat on something, water turns into vapor. Our body works very much the same way. So whether vibration and frequency sounds weird to you, what if we just change the word to you're humming and can you feel it? Where do you feel it? Right here. Good. Now we heat up the body like you're running. The body behaves completely differently. It sweats. There's always a chemical reaction. There's always a chemical reaction. And at the end, in having these conversations is that people may not understand at the great depth that you are speaking something what we perceive as so obvious, but they can't argue with you. They can't argue with you. They may not think that they can heal themselves. Great, they won't. If they don't think they can, they won't.
Exactly.
Funny enough, I do find that the majority of people that I come in contact with, if they are working with me, eventually they give over. They relax. And they start to believe that something can be better. So that means the majority of my conversations with the resistant, the ones who don't believe that they can fix or really, really heal themselves, it's what I feel that I'm known for is throwing kind of Hail Mary passes, like last-ditch efforts to get people the kind of information that they need to help themselves. And if somebody's in a really bad spot, sometimes it's as simple as understanding that they're there for a reason and they are the reason. It's not something external and out there in the universe. I mean, it could be, but it's really them. It's to learn this skill, to find peace in things that are unsolvable. And in my mind, that is a solve. That is fixing the problem. I would imagine, and may I never find out, that if God forbid I break my back or somebody I know gets that kind of injury where the odds don't look good for them, I don't know that I'd be capable of solving my problem and fixing my back. I don't know that. But I feel pretty confident I will figure out a way to live a good life. I'm going to try for fixing the back. But I can also, being so transparent, after the gloom and doom of a bad prognosis, I could probably find quality in the life that I have. I mean, there's something that I like to say a lot, and I do say it a lot. My job at the end of the day, really, is to help you feel good in the skin you're in. And maybe I should have started with that because that's easy to attach to. But to feel good in the skin you're in, you have to be really good at sharing your inner world with the outer world. You have to be really good with sound and vibration and communication and sharing. Whether it's song or speaking, what's the difference? Just a different train. It's just a different way to express yourself. And I just think we live in a world right now where most of us, or so many of us, too many of us, don't have enough risk where they're willing to share their heart, to share their soul, or they don't know how to do it effectively. You know, nobody wants to be puked on with emotions. But you said share yourself. I mean, there's some skill. There is some skill. Just looping it back to healing. The more we love with, the more we can show up in a loving way, the more you're healed. That's what healing is in my mind. It isn't just tissue healing. It isn't just spinal healing. It's relationship healing. And it is in my personal experience. And I've been really, really investigating for a very long time. I mean, to me, this has been my life's work, even as a little kid, is how can I love somebody better so they can love me back? We're much better at that as an adult, because now I love me great, and I don't care if you love me back, but usually you do. You know, I mean, it's not hard to like people who are really genuinely interested in people. You know, if you don't like me, that's not about me. I'm cool with that. I'm cool with that.
Sorry guys, we were having some technical difficulties over here, kind of like last time. So hopefully this is not going to end up with 2 separate episodes again. I mean, I don't mind, but you know. So one thing I wanted to talk to you about today, because I saw on Facebook you did a Facebook group about, you did some lives, and it was the 5 Tibetans, right? And I think you're the only person that I've ever met who also practices them. So how did you come across them?
Fluke. God, I think I heard somebody mention them. I'm actually trying to, going deep in my brain. How did I hear about the 5 Tibetan Rites? But however I heard about it, I know. It was James Nestor in the breathing book was talking about the 5 Tibetan Rites. Mm-hmm. And when I Googled them, and the very first YouTube video I saw on the 5 Tibetan Rites was a yogi who was talking about, he was the history. It was an entire hour conversation on this wonderful physical practice that is the fountain of youth. And I said, okay, let me see these 5 spectacular moves. And I'm like, I can do that. I can do that. So I tried it. I thought it was an accessible tool, an accessible practice for people who don't have a physical practice, who don't want to go to yoga class, because it's quick. And on day one, I love how it made me feel. So I stuck with it. I did it for 5 months straight. I got hurt on a different injury, and I left it for about a year. And there were people in my class who kept doing it. And they're like, I'm still doing the Tibetan Rites. I'm like, how's that going? And they're like, I'm still doing them. Must love them. And it was somewhere a couple months ago where I thought, I want to do them again. I want to commit to something every day. I happened to see another YouTube video where the guy, the gentleman who was sharing his experience with the Tibetan Rites, was talking deeply about the practice is showing up to the 5 rites, rather than what the rites actually are, although magical and wonderful, but just showing up to your practice. And that was my buy-in. That's what grabbed me the second time around, is I've been talking for a good 1.5 years, 2 years about your job. One of the requirements, one of the heavily, heavily suggested secrets to having a good life is having a satisfying practice on any given day. So the practice itself doesn't have to be great, but by showing up to it, it becomes satisfying. So if it's a short practice, I still did it. I'm satisfied. I did what my minimal today, or I did my maximum today. So to me, that's what the Tibetan Rites are particularly good at. There is so much flexibility in how you perform them and how you layer into them and where you access each and every time. So I'm a believer. So I'm surprised that you don't know other people who do it, but I'm not surprised, because in my world, I've noticed people have investigated them. I don't know what they've done with them. They seem a little too good to be true.
What do you mean? In what way?
Can I really feel that much better doing these 5 moves? You know what my biggest takeaway is?
Go on.
Really, really, really what's blown my mind doing the Tibetan Rites, it is personal. It's not TMI. It's not too much information. It's just real awareness. Most of my natural physical movements that I do are very feminine, side to side, swishy. I'm a dancer, hips, shoulders, all of this movement. And I have an unstable hip compound. So I have a movable SI joint. I've lost a lot of weakness and a lot of balance. And what I was doing was constantly dancing from side to side, increasing the instability. And I had given up my hard kettlebell practice. So what the Tibetan Rite practice is full of forward and backward movements.
That's true.
Stretching the front body, compressing the back body, compressing the back body, back and forth, and rotation after rotation, rep after rep. That what I've discovered is I'm fully aware when I'm having a better day in balance and stability, and I can feel, I know this is for those who are really into fitness, they're either going to call my bluff or tell me I'm absolutely right. I can tell the neurological patterning. I can actually feel my hips stabilize. I can feel the messaging. So I can feel, because what I do is I do a breath practice after the Tibetan Rites.
It's a good combo.
It's a good combo. Everything goes right. I can feel my hips constantly setting themselves. I can totally tell. I'm like, oh my God, this is my brain at work trying to stabilize. It's wonderful. So for those who don't know what the 5 Tibetan Rites are, and you and I know they're 6. I like to think they're 7. The 5 Tibetan Rites are, I made them up, by the way. It's a breathing practice.
Right.
So we'll talk about the 6th practice because I want to make sure we're talking about the same thing. We might be talking about something different. So the 5 Tibetan Rites is a string of asana positions, which you and I recognize as asana. To every asana, there is reps. So you do each rep. You start, if you're today's day 1 of your Tibetan Rite practice, you will learn what the 5 positions are, and you will do 3 rotations of each position. Your practice is about 2.5 minutes long. Sounds great, right?
Definitely.
Sounds great. You have to tune into your body for your body to say, it is time to move to 4. It is the only practice that does this. So it might take you a week before you can do 4 reps of the first move. Why is this so incredibly important? I mean, so incredibly important is your ego will want to go to 5, 6, 7, and 8 on day 2. But your body will tell you no. When you start to listen to your body, and you can tell today I have 5, is a really impactful day. What's really magical about them. So let me step back a bit. The end game, where you are trying to go to, what you're trying to master, is to be able to do 21 rotations of each of the 5 movements, which is closer to about 15 minutes worth of alone time with yourself. I mean, giving on your practice on that
Depends
day.
how fast you do them.
Yeah, well, I'm really a huge proponent that certain ones on any given day should be very slow and add eyesight. Mm-hmm. Where are you looking? To me, this is what I've discovered in my modern body. So some days I can do the 3rd position very fast. Other days I can do the 3rd position and I cough through them. And I go very slow. Mm-hmm. So it is, you become a balance to yourself and your best friend and your own coach, because the moves themselves are quite simple. That is what I have found masterful. So let me give another example. And this I learned from that second video that I watched. I'm like, oh, this is my practice. Show up to your practice. Show up to your daily practice, whatever that practice is, as good as it is. There are some days where I really only have 5, even though I've mastered 15. And there are some days I just lay there in that last position. After I'm done with up dog, down dog, I just go straight to up dog, down dog, and I just lay there. That's my practice. I think the positions. I energetically think them. So that's the Tibetan Rites. The Tibetan Rites, the history. Maybe I should have started with that, but I think this is pretty fun. It's pretty fun stuff. I bet anybody who sees this is going to Google the Tibetan Rites after this. The Tibetan Rites were from the Tibetan monks, about 5,000 years old. So back then, yoga was a seated practice. Meditation was a huge practice of the Tibetan monks. Some of them decided they needed to combine these 2 tools, these two skills of meditation and yoga, and make it physical so they could go about their day. Let's pick this up. I don't want to stare at a wall for an hour. I want to get right there. What they discovered is that all of them were functioning better in their physicality. I'm in. Marni was in. What I've noticed in my own body, I'm much more limber. I'm a lot more aware of my stability. I'm a lot more aware of my posture. And, well, you know me, but nobody else does. I'm an ex-CrossFitter, so I used to have big guns and really toned, muscular legs, and I've turned into a marshmallow. But my middle is so much smaller. So I'm not cut, but I don't have any. I mean, the fat is minimal. I mean, I have fat, but I'm old. I'm over 50. I just feel more like lean, and it's nice. It feels so good to be me, mm-hmm. And I haven't been sick. People always say your skin looks better. I'm like, Tibetan Rites. I don't know if it's the asana or it's the practice. So I'm a fan. So let me ask you, what was your sixth Tibetan rite?
The sixth one? Well, I remember reading a book. I think it was Peter Calder, mm-hmm. something like that. You read the book as well?
I didn't. I know it, but I haven't. You're thinking I'll read.
Right. Well, I barely remember what was written there because it was like probably back in Slovakia, so like 80 years ago. I haven't revisited it since then. But yeah, I actually read a second book, which was just mainly about the sixth one.
Yeah, wow.
And in the first book, Calder, I think it was the guy who taught him the 5 Tibetans. He talked about the sixth one being like the cherry on top of the cake, like mm-hmm. The really big final of the Tibetans. But he also mentioned that it's not for everyone. It's for people who give up their sexual life and, like assets, basically.
Yep.
But the thing is, that's not entirely true, right? Because this goes kind of like into what I talked about with the NOs in one of the previous episodes when we talked about sexuality and sexual kung fu and what the Taoists did. So basically, in the Eastern cultures like Tibet, China, they have very different view, let's say, of sexuality and how to make use of it, actually. Because over here, it's either you abuse it or you totally suppress it, and neither of them is healthy, actually.
Right.
So
right.
they found a way how to. They found different ways, actually, how to. For example, in Taoistic sexual kung fu, you basically pull the energy back in. You don't waste it, and then you recirculate it, and you basically use the energy for longevity, enlightenment, whatever you want, basically. And that's basically the fountain of youth. Because if you're constantly losing that energy, you can see what happens to people who are addicted to porn or sex and constantly losing this energy, and you're going to age faster, you're going to be just low,
Yeah, you'll go on Viagra.
So basically, yeah, pretty much. So basically, this sixth Tibetan, I found that it does work this way. It also kind of pulls the energy back in. It lets it go through all the chakras, all the other ones, from the lowest one all the way up to the crown chakra. And just like Calder said, it's like the top of the thing, Yeah. And it's very powerful. But aside from this, because like the first 5 Tibetans, they align the chakras, make them work properly, make the energy flow through your body a bit better, mm-hmm. which you can really feel afterwards.
You can. You really can.
Yeah. And then at the end, you make use of that by pulling the most powerful energy you have in your body, which is your sexual energy. Your mm-hmm. brain runs on it, basically, as we know from traditional Chinese medicine. So it's super powerful. And even on a physical level, I found that doing the 5 Tibetans, it works on the, skeletal muscles and, on the tendon level. But then the 6th Tibetan, it kind of works with the intestine and the inner organs, basically. Because what you're doing is you take a really deep breath in, you breathe out all the air out of your lungs, bend forwards. Then as you straighten up, you expand your chest as if you were to breathe in, but you relax your abdominal muscles.
I'm doing it right now.
Okay. But you expand your chest, but you don't really take any air in. So your lungs are entirely empty, which then causes your diaphragm to go up. And it kind of sucks your belly inside, right? And this is known from other yoga practices.
Yeah.
I think it was Nauli, one of the names of it. But I'm sure some people saw, or even old bodybuilders, when you see, for example, Arnold Schwarzenegger, because he also learned a lot of the positioning from like old school, old school strongmen from like the late 19th century, early 20th century. And when you see him, posing like this, and his stomach is like entirely in. You can see like his rib cage like this, and stomach is totally sucked in. He's basically doing a stomach vacuum, which is pretty much the same as the 6th Tibetan. So I found like I said, the 5 Tibetans work on the muscles. Like you said, it helps with your pelvis and everything. Helps you, if you're a little bit weaker, don't go to the gym. It's going to definitely make you stronger. It's going to make you more flexible, more mobile. Then you got the 6th Tibetan, which pulls all the extra energy back in, and it massages your inner organs, so you got the better blood flow and everything. That's really good. And just like you, we both found out that when you do the breathing practice at the end, whether it's just deep breathing, like Nathan Qigong or something like that, or the Wim Hof method, even better, then that kind of like really oxygenizes your body, and it goes like all the way to a cellular level. So you're working, I would say, like on all these levels, if you do all these 3 things together, and it's like 15, 20 minutes, maybe half an hour if you do all this, and you're going to get so much out of it. So that's why when I was training clients, for example, I would always bring this up, these 5 Tibetans, because not everyone is into Qigong. From a lot of people, it's just too slow and, trying to manipulate your energy, stuff like that. It's a little bit too much out there for certain people over here. But with this one, it works pretty much just as well. It's really effective. Like, it works on so many levels.
Well, you just feel incredibly present. And it's so interesting because it just shows there's not a lot of people teaching the Tibetan rites, and there's so much to learn from them, especially if you're learning them, empirically. Actually, I'm trying to say both experientially and empirically. And the way that I was interpreted the 6th rite, I'm just kind of fascinated because, being a female, we don't really do as much of that, or at least I've stayed away from that because it was really taught to me in a sense of abstinence for a period of time, kind of to pull in the energy, meaning don't act on that release. So what you just explained, it's so funny. Not so funny. That was incredibly, thank you for sharing that with your audience. Thank you for sharing that with me. That's
what I'm here for.
Yeah, that's what you're here for. Exactly. But it was so interesting because intuitively I'm just like, well, the breath practice, my 6th, the Tibetan Rite, is in child's pose. And it is Ujjayi breathing, but all through the nose. So it's all of that diaphragmatic sucking in, pushing out, sucking in, pushing out. And that's where I feel my entire insides move, body recalibrating. That's what I'm talking about when the brain works, is the recalibration. And I can feel my hips reset. That's so fascinating. So what I think I'm going to try by your inspiration. You're inspiring me is more is because I've seen so many people do the chest vacuum and try to do it independently with no other exercise, but that's their meditative breath practice. But putting it after the forward and backward, when I said I'm doing it right now, I was just feeling the sensation as best as I could. And I'm like, yep, I feel my entire energy line, meaning tailbone, pelvic bones, up my back very clearly. And I'm not even activated right now. I haven't been exercising. I'm like, wow, that would be really, really, really powerful. And the other thing you made me remember or inspired me to share with you is many times when I'm working with older bodies, and a lot of my clients are over 50, in class form, like in-person class form, is we do a really relaxing, long breath first. So more of the transformational breath, not this active Wim Hof breath, not the Tumo, but long in, long out, the circle breaths, the no pausing or the long holds, but after lots of what I'm calling where the body dances, on the cellular level. So we're there for good 10 to 20 minutes, just deep breathing, watching the body go in and out. So you're completely at peace. And then you do the Tibetan Rites. And then you do my sixth of doing the child's pose and doing the Ujjayi breath there. You are so pulled together energetically. So yeah, you feel like everything's flowing. And you did such a beautiful job, Elvis, such a beautiful job of expressing through all these beautiful art forms of how the energy flows. Done so well. I'm like, I said to you before we're talking, I ain't talking no guru stuff anymore. But so in layman's terms is I feel centered, peaceful, connected, and I have all of these felt sense words that I can share after I do a deep breath, then go into the rites and then do a little bit of Ujjayi breath just to pull myself back together. You know what now that I just heard myself say, pull myself back together, that would be the sixth rite.
Pretty much.
Pulling myself back together. I almost want to inspire people, our kind of request that everyone just goes and visits, sees, watch the Tibetan Rites and see if they can extrapolate for themselves. Why would it be beneficial to them? And why is it such the fountain of youth? Because I understood what you were saying. I'm not sure that everybody else would understand by sucking in your gut the rush of energy, if you've never felt it, why it's so powerful and gives us so much energy. But it is truly, and that I get, and maybe they would get too, your audience, why pulling in this energy, really feeling it spin inside the body, the organs being squeezed and released, because that's what happens in breath when the diaphragm moves, is how much your lower carriage, your bottom three chakras, but especially 1 and 2, where we wear our underpants, you feel it. And the more aware you become of that position of the body, that placement in the body, you do recognize that whatever position downstairs is exactly how tight the cranium is. You can easily feel, and you can, well, you know what I'm talking about. When you're working in Kundalini or Tantric and you're breathing and you're pulling in right there from belly all the way down, in and out, in and up, sorry. You can feel the sutures on your skull expand. And everybody can do this right now.
Yeah, here's the thing, actually. It's like two things that are totally separate, but it's like makes you think about it. Because when I was learning about the Taoist practices of sexual kung fu, I read multiple books from Mantak Chia. And in his practice, there are certain exercises also like kind of similar objective to pull the sexual energy up, through your spine and then let it circulate in the small heavenly circuit. But you also do certain movements with your pelvis, moving it back and forth, and also with your neck, basically like tucking your chin in like this, or doing a movement like this. And it's also what you're doing in most of the Tibet in the rites, isn't it? And the reason for it is to make the flow of energy go up the spine a bit better. Because he talks about certain, he calls them pumps that we have.
Pumps.
And in the sacrum and in the back of the neck, which also make the cerebrospinal fluid go a bit better. So there's a big connection there actually between these two separate practices.
Well, hats off to you for pulling it together. They're not separate practices; they're exactly the same. And I do feel like there are many people.
Well, it's two separate cultures they came up with basically the same thing.
Because they knew. It's because they knew something. I was giggling. I made a joke to my class yesterday because when I was doing this, I was coughing, and I said, in a modern body, especially women, the mammalian brain, that all of that modeling that we do for each other, that second tier of the parasympathetic nervous system, everything that we mirror and image and take in from other people's faces. So many of us have discomfort in our respiratory system up here, in our throat. And so when there's a lot of stretching, there's coughing. And so our modern bodies, the women over 50, I'm repeating myself, we almost need to do neck stretches first. And we didn't do that yesterday. We did a big breath practice in my class. And I was finding myself that this was so sensitive and itchy, which is your throat chakra. And I'm like, wow, this is so accurate for me today. And someone coincidentally said, why are there so many chins in this practice? And I said, not wanting to get physical and not even honestly thinking of that as the actual answer, but of course it is, as one of the part of the pump. I said, one of my discoveries on my modern female body in the 21st century is that the more I stretch my neck and bring my chin down, the more I'm working in the back of my neck, all of these in the cervical spine, but also with all of the trauma in the world, the more I move this sensitive part of my body and focus up and take in information rather than just going, wide scope, the more I take fixed focus to look up and stretch my neck and then come on down and fix focus, I am slowing down my entire process. It becomes so meditative, and it feels, I can't say that it feels physically good, but it feels so emotionally good to not be tearing through these positions and taking in information. I just feel like my sympathetic nervous system's being conditioned to handle more stress. I don't know if anybody...
It's quite possible.
I mean, I genuinely tell myself the more I can take in visually during these asanas, the more information I am taking in that supports me. I don't know about you, but my whole yoga practice until the last year has been to escape the world with my eyes closed and to feel glorious. So I go into my dream world when I do it. My meditative practice, which is now the Tibetan Rites, to be honest, I cannot lie, is my breath work and the Tibetan Rites. But until recently, I was trying to force myself to sit quiet, close my eyes, go inwards. And where I am right now is I need to split that focus. I'm very internal, but I'm taking in information. I don't know. I mean, I have a theory in my mind, but I feel like it's absolutely right thing for me. And I noticed in my students, it's the right thing for them too. Sometimes, not all the time. Really cool. Thank you for letting me remind myself of that and be able to share that. I mean, do you think the people who listen understand about like how much eyesight and where you look and how you look and what your pupils do, how much it's connected to their ability to handle stress and trauma? I don't know.
Let us know in the comments.
Please let us know. Yeah. I'm going back to my other career of, teaching voice and communications. When people get nervous, you can see it now. When they get nervous or they're uncomfortable with what they have to say, their vision gets very locked and deeply, they're not even looking at anything. They're looking at nothing. So honestly, everything goes in a haze, but their eyes look like they are locked into something, but they're not. That is trauma. So much of what you do to help people communicate. So I'm like, wow, with the Tibetan Rites, maybe I really learned it through that, is to keep changing your focus until you're out of the loop. So you're singing or you're talking, you let everything go soft and you just look in the corner, you move your neck. And eventually the whole body softens and is just able to communicate and sing from a place of much more freedom and clarity. I'm going to think about that. Is there any relationship to that one too? I don't know.
Yeah, it might be.
I think I know, but I don't know. Well, I also know nothing about the something that you referred to, but when you explained it, I got it. I thought that was very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
You're European. I feel like you have more information of the old. You get to bounce into more kinds of people. I don't know. I'm making that up.
Yeah,
it's just your journey.
The fact that I'm from Europe, it's just
journey.
me. I mean, majority of people like where I grew up, they weren't into this stuff. They didn't know about it. I just happened to stumble upon a few things that got me started, and then I just end up like in my late teens, in my early 20s. I just started reading books, ordering them. A lot of them being published in the States.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So just like last year when Marni first came on the podcast, we had to cut the conversation short due to technical difficulties and time constraints. So make sure you check out the following episode, which is going to be the second part of this podcast. I really hope you enjoy this podcast. And also, if you like music, guitar, electric guitar, acoustic and guitar covers, and also want to hear some of my original songs, make sure you check out my new YouTube, Instagram and TikTok. Yes, I'm on that too now. Not proud of it. So make sure you check that out too. And I really appreciate you guys. See you in the next one.